face, no.
And I just don't, and I just want to say, I don't think anyone else, like in the history of US presidents, could claim, and this is a bold statement, but could claim ever having that feat. Like, no one, and there's been some good, like, tacticians from, like, the sitting US presidents, there's been some real goats, but, like, Donald Trump surely needs to be put on GOAT mountain of US presidents, especially considering how the public has been turned against him by mass media, how he's been robbed of an election due to election fraud, how many assassination attempts he survived, how many wars he's ended, and how he sponsored basically world peace, and how on top of that he's friends with all the baddest guys in the world, and he stops the bad guys from being bad for the sake of his own cause. And that's crazy when you think about it, that a white boy from basically New York can have all this power, you know. And that is world politics for you, ladies and gentlemen. The Biden and Harris administration, on the other hand, are for the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, as well as the tension between China and Taiwan. Highly culpable, highly responsible. Biden and Harris cocked up everything. Now Harris is left to wail belly up on the beach, facing the music while Biden discovers what is music. If Trump was still president, none of this would have happened. He was too respected by President Xi and President Putin. They really made the US, and I'm talking about the Biden-Harris administration, look dumb, which is dumb because everyone knows the US hate looking dumb, so that's why all they can't help but do is discredit themselves. What also doesn't get media attention is, like, I'm going to talk about, like, Venezuela and how it's a bit suspicious that all these MS-13 gangsters are no longer in Venezuela, and now this US has this whole, like, gangster, like, importation, mass flipping, alien farming mumbo jumbo going on there, where now we're seeing, like, I don't know how many, literally tens of thousands of Venezuelan gangsters are being dumped in US cities. These are, like, again, people, the worst of the worst. They are murderers, robbers, rapists, and drug lords, all that cannot speak a word of the native tongue of where they're getting dumped at, which is the US, which is not even English, it's US English, right? They don't say zebra, they say zebra again, so it's their own native language, and are now set to cause havoc in these traditionally conservative cities. And you gotta ask yourself, why are they being dumped in these cities? Who are they being dumped there by? And why those cities specifically around this time? It's all questions that the public need to ask themselves, and it's not our job to give you the answers, but then just help you ask the right questions, right? So we're giving you the right questions to ask. The role is on you, obviously, to do the research. We all know that they staged a mass exodus, and they could now be staging this mass importation of criminals in fear of losing the election to Trump. And on the points of mass media cover-ups, how haven't we heard anything about the 2.5 decillion fine, which is basically like $2.5 trillion Russia has slapped on Google, since Google has been guilty of censoring pro-Putin content within China and within Russia itself. And that's a huge crime, guys, especially since we've seen the whole Russia hoax thing, which was also a lie, where basically, if you don't know what happened, is for the longest amount of time during Trump's presidency, they said Trump and his administration, his campaign, colluded with Russia to help him win the election. It got found out that Russia did try and manipulate the elections, but Trump's party wasn't guilty. So which party was guilty? That's the question you need to ask yourself. That's why there was a mass cover-up of, hey, you know what, Russia was involved, but who was Russia involved with? Oh, when it got found out, the same people blowing the whistle are the same people that bought the whistle illicitly, I might add. Then it's like, okay, let's just cover this up, let's just put some handy on it, let's just put some spurts and make sure it's all better, you know, before daddy comes and sees the car and sees the ding on the car. And that is essentially what this whole thing is. It's just the Democratic Party and the Biden and Harris administration acting like a bunch of spoiled brats and playing with the country, playing with the world like it's some toy, when it isn't a toy. right? It isn't a toy, and we're seeing them censor things in people's countries that don't fit the world agenda, which is why I say it's very important for the public to kind of educate themselves, because without knowing it, they are getting brainwashed. Without knowing it, they are being manipulated and hypnotized to obviously be farmed in a certain way with certain opinions, and that needs to change. That needs to change. People need to take the brainwashing helmet off, and they need to really seriously examine what is wrong with themselves, what is wrong with the culture, what is wrong with society, and why is things always ending up in a hamster wheel, and then we can actually make some changes, because these stories come out and people that are the smart people already know, get more suspicious, make more money, get better friends, get better power, and then they insulate themselves. And then the people who care about the people who aren't insulated are the same ones who go to jail, are the same ones whose names get ostracized, are the same ones who are literally spat on by public. And anyone close to them will get spat on too. Yet it's these people, and there's a bunch of them, that are doing God's work and actually paving the way forward for a lot of young people, a lot of people as well that are like need a break, and then just besides actually doing the work the world wants, because the world will have an agenda, forget about it, and then get onto a new agenda, but the work of the first and prior agenda still needs to be accomplished. So it's just like people can find the stories, give you the stories, the investigators can investigate, the cops can be the cops, but if people don't actually pick up the story and are interested in it, and it isn't formatted for them to be interested in, then we're just running like a hamster race for nothing, because like I can tell you about the story with the Russia hoax and the rigging of the election for Trump, and I can tell you the story about like how there's now this huge fine on Google from the government of Russia. But what does it really do, What does it really do? Because all of this is extremely illegal, I might add, but which is why it is important for the mass public to be extremely vigilant on what's put in front of them. It's kind of like when Tokyo Setwale came out to say he had this huge $1 billion stimulus package available, but no one took him up on his offer. He was supposed to hold a press conference, but they never did. Suddenly everything is wiped off the internet. It's all so purposeful what these people do. Many lectures and videos that need to be seen and should be seen are hidden on the deep throes of YouTube because it doesn't fit with the censorship agenda. God willing, Donald Trump wins these elections, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Google running to his administration to fix their fuck up in Russia. It's all too classical, and of course, Trump, being the good Samaritan he is, will only be too happy to oblige. Do you think they will stop crucifying him? Of course not. It's like they purposefully turning a blind eye to the fact that the culture has shifted towards backing Trump. And I think it only makes sense. It only makes sense why the culture would shift this way. Instead of riding the wave, they want to now still continue to push harder against the tide, which is why they're drowning. The same man that they so harshly victimize must now play lifeguard and save them from the riptide. Donald Trump, leader of world politics, is the leader of world politics because he's the bravest man in the room. He's the bravest man in the world. And that's why people respect him. That's why people fall out to him, if like just a bit of jail slang. It's because he is the bravest and strongest and therefore most respected man in the room, and the world still works that way. His biggest lesson, though, is you can't have open borders and you need to have fair elections. I think from a South African perspective, our only option is to get behind Donald J. Trump as a country when he becomes US president. Our relations between the Biden administration are not strong at all. The Biden-Harris administration, we are literally losing the AGOA agreement due to our stance on the conflict in Palestine and our role in the ICJ ruling regarding the conflict within Gaza, a genocide. If you don't know what the AGOA agreement is, it's basically a trade deal between South Africa and the US which enable enables our country to export vast quantities of an array of products, from citrus to meat, like a lot of farming stuff, but even to resins used in US pipelines. Due to this trade deal, we have employed many local South African citizens. Many US companies based their regional headquarters in South Africa, and there's an increased amount of imports and exports, higher revenue on customs, VAT and duty for our government, greater investment within communities as well as public infrastructure. These are just a few examples, but anyway, there are many more. This again is due to President Cyril Ramaphosa and his presidency. What is also due to President Cyril Ramaphosa and his presidency is the ICJ court ruling that declared the conflict in Gaza a genocide. When everyone sat down, he stood up. Seems like everyone forgot about that. The media will never remind you. Besides this, what never got said but should have, but they're too busy reporting rubbish and eating ice cream, is the Brics 2024 conference. The strong appeal that President Cyril Ramaphosa had given the Brics committee, with President Putin of Russia as chair at this committee meeting, against the genocide in Palestine, as well as the very forgotten and incredibly not covered by the press conflict within Sudan. It is through President Cyril Ramaphosa standing as sentinel prime of the African Union that any of our wishes can actually be addressed. He is actually someone who listens to the wishes of the people. Besides that, he actually makes concrete policy change and not just regulation. He actually brings new bills and schemes to the floor. He also managed the COVID-19 virus magnificently, just like Donald J. Trump, I might add. A lot of people expected South Africa to be in a far worse position, yet somehow the country managed to pull through as always. Our presidency needs to back Donald Trump in US office because we have no choice. If Kamala Harris is elected into office, we are going to lose the AGOA agreement due to our stance of the genocide in Gaza. As a result, hundreds of thousands of jobs will be lost. Factories will shut down, industries and infrastructure will collapse, personal income tax as well as VAT and a bunch of other things will have to increase to counteract for the loss in tax revenue from the US companies leaving. This is again all due to our stance on the genocide in Palestine, which our President Cyril Ramaphosa was formidable in standing unwavered while drawing a hard line with the United Nations. This just goes to show you how evil the US Democrats are, as well as the Biden-Harris administration really is. They would literally rather cause mass unemployment, shut down factories, bankrupt industries, put a country into recession, basically destabilize an economy. Also, they can just kill some more babies, or at least stop anyone from stopping their friends. That's how evil they are. We need Donald Trump to come back and restore order in the world. He is literally the only one who can. He's the only man respected by everyone, and that's the truth.